The impossible breakdown. The bridge of the Sovereign's pride had never known silence. For 300 years, the flagship of the Thalorian Empire hummed with the gentle whispers of its bio-neural consciousness, a living ship that thought and felt alongside its crew. Admiral Zara Vex stood at her command station, her silver-scaled hands moving gracefully over interfaces that responded to her thoughts as much as her touch. The massive vessel stretched 15 kilometers from bow to stern, its organic hull pulsing with veins of bioluminescent energy that carried information faster than any mechanical system could dream. But today, something was terribly wrong. The first sign came during the morning fleet coordination. Zara had been reviewing patrol assignments for the Outer Rim territories when the ship's consciousness suddenly stuttered. The gentle mental connection that allowed her to feel the vessel's mood flickered like a dying flame. Around her, the bridge, crew of various species looked up from their stations with expressions of confusion and growing alarm. "Admiral," called out Navigation Officer Kelm, his forearms working frantically at his console. "The ship is not responding to course corrections. The bio-neural pathways are showing massive disruption patterns." Zara felt a chill run through her spine. The Sovereign's pride controlled the movements and coordination of over 200 ships in the Imperial fleet. It was the brain that guided their military operations across 12 star systems. If the flagship failed, the entire fleet would become a scattered, vulnerable collection of individual vessels. "Engineering report," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority earned through decades of command. Chief Engineer Thys materialized on the main display, his crystalline form, reflecting the emergency lights of the engineering deck. The Thalorian bioengineer's usually steady demeanor showed cracks of panic. "Admiral, we have multiple system failures cascading through the ship's consciousness. The bio-neural networks that control everything from life support to weapons are experiencing what I can only describe as a complete breakdown." "Explain," Zara demanded. "The living components of our ship have always maintained perfect harmony. Every cell, every neural pathway, every thought process worked in absolute synchronization. But something has disrupted that perfection. The consciousness is fragmenting, fighting against itself." On the tactical display, Zara could see the other ships in her fleet beginning to drift slightly out of formation. Without the flagship's guiding intelligence, they were like children separated from their parent. Even worse, long-range sensors showed enemy Korthax battle groups moving toward their position. In 6 hours, they would be within striking distance. "Time until complete failure?" she asked. Thys consulted his readings, his crystalline form dimming with worry. "At the current rate of degradation, we have perhaps 4 hours before all primary systems shut down. After that, the ship will be nothing more than a floating hulk." Zara immediately activated fleet-wide communications, calling for the best minds available. Within 2 hours, the most brilliant engineers from across the galaxy had arrived via emergency transport. The response was impressive and swift. From the Vega system came the crystalline architects, beings of living mineral who could manipulate matter at the quantum level. Their leader, Master Constructor Xylanthus, examined the ship's bio-neural networks with instruments that could peer into individual atoms. These beings had built stellar engineering projects that spanned light years, constructing space habitats that housed billions of beings. "The quantum foundations appear stable," Xylanthus reported in a voice like wind through crystal caves. "But there is something we cannot identify. The bio-neural pathways exist in a state that defies our understanding. They are perfectly constructed, yet they refuse to function." The Plasma Masters arrived next, beings of pure energy from the fire worlds of the Arcturus sector. They could manipulate the fundamental forces that held matter together, bending energy to their will with casual ease. Master Pyrion, a creature of controlled stellar fire, attempted to reroute power through alternative pathways. "The energy flows are correct." Pyrion's voice crackled like a solar flare. "Every connection carries the proper charge. Every pathway channels the exact amount of power needed. There is no reason for this failure to exist." Even the legendary Void Shapers came, beings who existed partially outside normal spacetime and could manipulate reality itself in small ways. They examined the ship from dimensions that normal creatures could not perceive, looking for tears in spacetime or exotic matter intrusions. Reality is intact, whispered Void Shaper Nethys, her form barely visible as a distortion in the air. The ship exists in all proper dimensions. There is no external force causing this malfunction. Hours passed as the greatest minds in the galaxy worked frantically. They ran diagnostics that could map every molecule in the ship. They applied solutions that had solved engineering problems across 1,000 worlds. They brought technologies that civilizations had developed over millions of years. Nothing worked. With each passing minute, the Sovereign's pride grew weaker. The bio-neural consciousness that had once been vibrant and aware became increasingly fragmented and confused. System after system began to fail as the living ship's mind slowly died. Zara watched the tactical display with growing desperation. Enemy forces were now only 3 hours away. Her fleet, without the flagship's coordination, was vulnerable and scattered. The greatest engineering minds in the galaxy stood around her bridge, defeated by a problem they could not even properly identify. It was then that Captain Elena Rodriguez stepped forward. Elena was the leader of a small human engineering team that had been aboard as part of an cultural exchange program. Humans were the newest members of the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years earlier. Their technology was considered primitive by galactic standards. They still used mechanical systems where other races had evolved beyond physical limitations centuries ago. "Admiral Vex," Elena said in accented galactic standard, "my team requests permission to examine your ship's systems." A ripple of barely concealed amusement went through the assembled alien engineers. Master Constructor Xelanthis's crystalline form chimed with what might have been laughter. "Captain Rodriguez, this is a bio-neural consciousness of extraordinary complexity. Your people still use mechanical computers and chemical propulsion for space travel." "That's exactly why we might see something you've missed," Elena replied calmly. Her brown eyes held a determination that impressed Zara, even in their desperate situation. Chief Engineer Thess stepped forward, his tone respectful but firm. "Captain, these are living systems that have evolved over millions of years. Your people work with metals and electronics. The gap in understanding is simply too vast." Elena nodded, acknowledging the truth of his words. "You're absolutely right. We don't understand how your bio-neural networks function. We don't have quantum consciousness or crystalline construction abilities. We can't manipulate energy like living gods or bend reality to our will." She paused, looking around at the assembled beings who represented the pinnacle of galactic engineering achievement. "But we're really good at fixing things that don't work." Master Pyrion's energy form flickered with what might have been irritation. "Captain, we have applied every principle of advanced engineering. We have used technologies that your species will not develop for thousands of years. If our methods cannot solve this problem, what could your primitive tools possibly accomplish?" Elena smiled, and there was something in that expression that reminded Zara of the stories she had heard about human determination. "Master Pyrion, sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the right solution. Sometimes you need someone who thinks differently." The bridge fell silent except for the increasingly erratic sounds of failing systems. Time was running out. The enemy fleet would arrive soon. The greatest minds in the galaxy had failed. Admiral Zara Vex looked at the human captain for a long moment. Elena Rodriguez was small compared to most of the beings on the bridge. Her species was young, their technology basic, their understanding of galactic science limited. But there was something in her eyes that spoke of solutions found in impossible situations, of problems solved through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "Captain Rodriguez," Zara said finally, "you have 2 hours. Show us what human ingenuity can accomplish." Human solutions and victory. Elena Rodriguez had seen this kind of problem before, though never on such a massive scale. As she led her small team of human engineers through the corridors of the Sovereign's Pride, she explained her theory to her colleagues. "Listen," she said to her team of 6 engineers as they made their way to the ship's bio-neural center. "Every advanced civilization we've met has achieved perfection in their technology. Perfect crystals, perfect energy manipulation, perfect biological systems." Her second-in-command engineer Marcus Chen nodded thoughtfully. "And perfection is the problem? Think about it. Elena continued as they entered the vast chamber that housed the ship's consciousness. Back on Earth, our most advanced computer systems need random number generators to function properly. Our brains work because neurons fire in slightly chaotic patterns. Life itself depends on controlled randomness and adaptation. The bio-neural center was breathtaking. Stretching through multiple levels of the ship, it looked like a vast forest made of light and living tissue. Tendrils of bioluminescent material formed intricate patterns, carrying information through the ship's consciousness. But now those patterns were static, locked in perfect but non-functional arrangements. "My God," whispered Engineer Sarah Park, the team's neural systems specialist. "It's like looking at a brain where every neuron is firing in perfect synchronization. No wonder it's not working." Elena connected her portable scanner to one of the bio-neural interfaces. The device was crude by Galactic standards, but it could show her something the advanced sensors had missed. "Look at these patterns," she said, displaying the data on her tablet. "Every pathway is optimized for maximum efficiency. Every connection is perfectly balanced. Every information flow follows the ideal mathematical model. That's what we'd expect from Thalorian bioengineering," Marcus observed. "But real consciousness doesn't work that way," Elena replied. "Our brains are messy. They have redundant pathways, unexpected connections, and random firing patterns. That chaos is what allows for creativity, adaptation, and problem-solving." The team spent the next hour analyzing the ship's consciousness with their primitive but effective tools. What they found confirmed Elena's suspicions. The bio-neural network had achieved such perfect optimization that it had lost the ability to adapt or think flexibly. When faced with an unexpected situation, it couldn't find alternative solutions because every pathway was locked into its ideal configuration. "It's like a master musician who has practiced a piece so perfectly that they can't improvise anymore," explained Dr. Park. "The ship's consciousness knows exactly how to perform its functions, but it doesn't know how to handle anything unexpected." Back on the bridge, Admiral Zara Vex watched the human team work with growing curiosity. Their methods were unlike anything she had seen. Instead of applying advanced technologies, they seemed to be poking at the ship's systems with simple diagnostic tools. Where other engineers had tried to enhance the bio-neural networks, the humans appeared to be introducing small disruptions. "Admiral," Chief Engineer Thiss reported with obvious confusion, "the humans are deliberately introducing irregularities into our perfectly calibrated systems. They're adding random fluctuations to pathways that took us centuries to optimize." "What exactly are they doing?" Zara asked. "They call it controlled chaos," Thiss replied, his crystalline form flickering with bewilderment. "They're forcing our bio-neural pathways to develop alternative routing patterns by introducing small random elements." Master Constructor Zelanthus materialized beside them, his quantum sensors focused on the human team's work. "This is incomprehensible. They are deliberately making our systems less efficient. They are introducing imperfections into perfect designs." But something was happening. The ship's consciousness, which had been steadily declining toward complete failure, began to show signs of renewed activity. The bio-neural pathways that had been locked in static perfection started to develop new connections, alternative routes, backup systems. Elena's voice came through the communication system. "Admiral Vex, we're ready to implement our solution, but I need to warn you it's going to feel strange to your ship's consciousness." "Explain," Zara commanded. "We're going to introduce what we call adaptive stress into the bio-neural networks. Your ship's consciousness has been so perfectly optimized that it forgot how to think flexibly. We're going to teach it to be creative again." Master Pyrion's energy form flared with indignation. "You cannot improve upon millions of years of bio-neural evolution with your primitive methods." "We're not trying to improve it," Elena replied, calmly. "We're trying to make it work." The process began slowly. The human team introduced carefully calculated random elements into the ship's information processing systems. They created alternative pathways that were slightly less efficient but more adaptable. They added controlled chaos that forced the bio-neural networks to develop creative solutions. At first, the ship's consciousness resisted. Every system had been designed to achieve perfect efficiency, and the random elements felt like contamination. But gradually something remarkable happened. The bio-neural pathways began to adapt, creating new connections and alternative processing methods. "Incredible," whispered Void Shaper Nethys. "The consciousness is learning to think in ways it never could before." The change accelerated. Systems that had been failing began to come back online. The ship's consciousness, no longer locked in static perfection, started to solve problems it had been unable to address. Navigation systems found new routing algorithms. Weapon systems developed improved targeting protocols. Life support discovered more efficient resource management techniques. "Admiral," Navigation Officer Kelm reported with amazement, "the ship is not just functional again, it's performing better than before. The consciousness is finding solutions to problems we didn't even know we had." On the tactical display, the fleet began to reform into proper formation as the Sovereign's Pride resumed its coordinating role. But now the formation was more flexible, more adaptive than the rigid perfection they had maintained before. The timing could not have been better. Enemy Korthax forces emerged from hyperspace just as the flagship completed its restoration. But instead of finding a vulnerable, scattered fleet, they faced a coordinated force that responded to threats with unprecedented flexibility and creativity. The battle was brief. The enemy had expected to face the same predictable Thalorian tactics they had fought against for decades. Instead, they encountered a fleet consciousness that could adapt and improvise in real time. The Korthax forces, faced with tactics they could not predict or counter, retreated within an hour. Admiral Zara Vex stood on her bridge, watching the enemy ships disappear into hyperspace. Around her, the most advanced beings in the galaxy stared at diagnostic displays showing the ship's improved performance with expressions of wonder and disbelief. "Captain Rodriguez," she said formally, "approach." Elena walked to the command station, still wearing her simple human engineering coveralls, among beings who manipulated matter and energy at will. "You have saved not just my ship but my entire fleet," Zara continued. "How do we properly thank the engineers who succeeded where the greatest minds in the galaxy failed?" Elena smiled, that same determined expression that had convinced Zara to give humans a chance. "Admiral, we just did what humans do best. We saw something that didn't work and we figured out how to fix it." Master Constructor Xelanthus approached, his crystalline form resonating with newfound respect. "Captain Rodriguez, your methods appear primitive to us, but the results speak for themselves. How did your species develop such unconventional problem-solving abilities?" "Because our technology isn't perfect," Elena replied. "We've had to learn to work with systems that break down, that don't perform optimally, that require constant adaptation and creative solutions. We're not the most advanced species in the galaxy, but we might be the best at dealing with imperfection." Chief Engineer Theiss stepped forward, his tone completely changed from the dismissive attitude he had shown earlier. "Captain, would your team consider staying aboard permanently? I believe we could learn much from your approach to engineering problems." Elena looked around at her small team, then back at the assembled alien engineers. "We'd be honored to serve alongside you, but I have one condition." "Name it," Admiral Zara Vex said immediately. "Next time something breaks that you can't fix, don't wait until the last minute to ask the humans for help." The bridge filled with sounds that might have been laughter from beings who didn't typically find humor in engineering problems. But there was respect in those sounds, an acknowledgement of a truth that none of them had previously understood. Sometimes the most advanced solution was not the right solution. Sometimes you needed someone who thought differently, who approached problems from angles that perfect beings could not see. Sometimes you needed the kind of stubborn creativity that came from dealing with imperfect systems and impossible situations. The Sovereign's Pride sailed through space with its consciousness, stronger and more adaptable than ever before. In its bio-neural networks, perfect pathways now coexisted with chaotic alternatives, creating a hybrid system that was both efficient and creative. And in the engineering sections, humans worked alongside the galaxy's most advanced beings, teaching them that sometimes the best way to fix something was not to make it perfect, but to help it learn how to be perfectly imperfect. The flagship had fallen silent, but human ingenuity had brought it back online. And in doing so, it had learned to sing a song more beautiful and complex than any it had known before.